All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Eigbrett, and joined with me is the captain, Mr. Andy Full, and our long lost co-host brethren down below joining us again, Mr. Drew Gregory. What's going on, fellas?
Not much, man. Just been a pretty busy week for me and for you. It's only just begun, my friend. And Andrew, I've listened. I'm a serious fan of this podcast, guys. I listen to every episode on my trips to the tournaments. And Andrew, I know you are getting slammed with guide trips and everything else you got going on. Plus, you have a little one too, still. So your life's always busy, my friend. But I'm glad to be back on here with you, fellas.
Thanks for joining us. And I just want to say congrats to both of you. I guess we can open the show by saying the champs are here. Which is awesome. You guys respectively
off,
won
baby.
the
Oh,
biggest
that's right. I probably should show
tournaments in the kayak thing, right? Like the Hobie and Bassmaster Kayak series. That's incredible. Congrats to both of you. Seriously.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Some serious hardware there.
Jeez, that's a nice trophy Hobie's got this year, man. I might have to shoot for one of those.
She was like, "Yeah, I'll just throw in an entry fee and get me one of them trophies."
Yeah, if only it was that easy. Hang on, let me post this
right.
to Instagram so we can get some people on here.
Heck yeah.
All right, posted
Heck yeah.
the IG stories up.
But,
All right,
Andy, dude, thank you for holding down the fort last week. You and Deacon. It feels like a year since I've been on the show, and I have to be honest. The week of peaceful tent camping, I say peaceful tent camping, but waking up at 3:30 in the morning and walking a mile to my car, which we'll get into that campground story here in a second.
Yeah.
Wasn't exactly peaceful, but it was a relaxing week. And thank you guys for holding down the fort while get to go fishing.
Hey, it was a much needed vacation for yourself, which turned into a mighty fine one. So
yeah, we came home with 11 grand out of a plastic boat, so you can't really complain with that.
wedding fun.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And hey, look, your entry fee was what,
Wedding
$260,
fun.
quote unquote.
Fishing
yeah.
fishing tackle.
Yeah, that's right. If she's listening, it's a wedding fun. But no, we're going fishing, boys.
That's right. And your entry fee was what? I mean, you probably spent $1,000 on that trip. You know what I mean? Gas, or you camped or whatever. I don't know what you spent, but entry fee was like $260. So, I mean, what's impressive is to win that, in a an open or something. A lot of times you're spending $5,000 just on the entry fee alone. Then the travel and the gas is so much more. I mean, dude, your net was unreal. That's really cool, man.
Yeah, Deacon and I are actually talking about potentially doing a show about this, like what it might look like for expenses and profits for like an open or an elite series tournament, getting guys from those niches to come and talk about what they'll pay out like expense wise and then what they earn, if they win or like get a check. But dude, like I think my total was probably around $800 spent.
Yeah.
To get down there. And most of that was gas because camping for the week, I think, was like $115 for like 7 nights. Like it was a big return on investment going down there. And huge shout out to Jason Alford. I don't think he's be tuning in tonight. Hopefully he is, but he convinced me like probably 2 hours before the cutoff to join the Peach State Kayak Anglers Trail that they're doing in conjunction Saturday, and got third in that, so got some nice $400 to
extra. Yeah,
that covered the gas for the trip. Yeah,
he's a good dude. Yeah,
but yeah, let's start getting into this thing because like I was excited for this show because one, getting you back on here because we talked a bunch, throughout practice, like your practice, throughout my practice, your drive there and back, my drive there and back. We were in constant communication. It was just kind of cool how we got some victories pretty close together.
That was pretty crazy, man, because we do stay in touch quite a bit. Friends on and off the water and on the podcast, off the podcast. And it's just kind of crazy how it worked out like that, man. I mean, you were like right involved with my event because I wanted to talk to somebody outside of the event. And, I mean, you're just kind of always up for talk, which is what's cool for you guys that don't know Bailey. He obviously, if you listen to this podcast, you probably know this. He just loves this sport. Like he loves it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You can't do a podcast. Look, I can't do a podcast. I do like one a month, and that's like a lot for me, right? I mean, my own podcast. I do go on other ones from time to time. But dude, you're on this thing constantly. Look at this. What is he saying? 2 champions. Andy, you're next, buddy.
Yeah,
You're next.
The issue with that, real fast. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Sorry,
Go
Drew.
ahead.
Right now, I think I'm only fishing 2 tournaments all year. So
Oh man,
it's gonna be a tough one. And the one I'm still on the fence with, me and Bailey were talking about fishing on a Finger Lake, but the other one is the Canadian Tire Open, which is a Canadian tournament on Lake Erie that me and my partner Josh almost won a few years ago out of, I think there's like 95 boats. So, and then our good buddies won it the year after. So that's the one that I'm really looking forward to in October. But those are really the only 2 I have on my calendar
You can
at
do
this
it.
moment.
I mean, you know, Bailey, how many tournaments have you fished this year? Kayak tournaments.
I think that was my second one, but third one
Second?
this weekend. Yeah.
Okay, second one, Andrew. Did you hear that? He did 2. He's doing more, but he's only done 2 and he's already won one. So you can do it. You've got 2 in your schedule. I was on my 4th one. It took me, my 4th to do it this year. But
well, technically, actually, if we count that local tournament Saturday, it was my 3rd.
Okay, well, it's still possible. The law of averages, you can make it happen with just even 2. We believe in you, unless you want to go fish the Champlain tournament that I'm fishing with, the KBF tournament and a kayak. I know you could really do good up there with those.
Take my Hobie.
Fish. So yeah, take his Hobie.
Geez.
I already got the lodging, Airbnb set.
I would love to, but I'm booked that weekend for guide trips. So
I'm still trying to talk Andy into doing a 1v1 on the Hobie, like taking him down to
I
Morgan
would
Marine.
lose all day. I would lose all day. I don't think
I think you would love the Hobie.
I'm sure I would love
would.
the Hobie, but I don't like losing. So this is a severe disadvantage. Heck, if Bailey had a boat, to be honest, if Bailey had a boat, I think I would be at a disadvantage. So, dude's a hammer.
Except I've driven a boat like 4 times in my entire life, so I'd have to learn to drive the damn thing first.
They're not hard. They just go straight.
Yeah, that's hard to believe, Bailey. I can't believe that. But anyway, you do love the sport. What I was saying, you are passionate. You're the same on and off the camera, so it's cool. I mean, I call you up and we're just pumped to talk fishing. I'm on the road or you're on the road. Talk about the tournament, some stuff we're thinking about trying. So it's really cool to have somebody. Everybody's got those kind of people. Obviously, just a few people you can call and they're just as jacked up as you are, on the road. So it's pretty cool that we were able to pull this off, back to back. And I'm excited to get into it and definitely want to shine a much bigger light on your tournament and your win. It's pretty impressive, man. It's the more recent one. And this is your podcast, really. So let's, man, I want to start with that. That's what I want to know about. I want to hear more about it because I specifically cut our conversation off a little early the other day so that I couldn't hear any more. Plus I had kids screaming and stuff. But anyway, I want to know about it now. I want it all fresh during this podcast so I can react in real time.
So give it to us, Gator Bait, as Jim Johnson is saying. So first, I want to hear about the crazy gator story, dude, you called and freaked out about. So we'll start there first of all. I think you posted a clip about it earlier.
I did, yeah. I posted a clip about it on my Instagram of like me rounding this corner, like half paying attention, and this like 10+ footer comes crashing off the bank, like huge splash, and all I see is his head go into the water towards me. And I'm like, being the New Yorker, I'm like crapping myself, like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And I wasn't saying, oh God, it was expletives, but it was just like trying to, and it's hilarious because you say run for your life, but I was pedaling for my life.
Yeah.
But it was
the Jaws theme.
Yeah. there'll be actually, it's funny. So there'll be a podcast out tomorrow. I did this evening with Anglers Channel, and those boys are actually from Alabama. And that was one of the biggest things they wanted to talk about was, what that was like being this gator infested waters in a plastic boat where you're at water level with these things. And I was like, at first, dude, like the first ramp I pulled up to in practice, there was like 2 gators, like decent sized ones sitting exactly where I needed to launch. And I waited like a chicken. I waited like 30 minutes to launch to make sure they didn't come back up when they slinked back into the water. But honestly, I learned pretty quick that they're actually pretty afraid of you. Like even if you're in a kayak, but this is like the time of year, apparently it's their mating season, that you do not want to piss them off. And we'll get into a cool story at the end that Brady, who's the day 1 leader, and I ran into one that was on the verge of mating and was very temperamental at the very last hour of day 2. And I heard we'll get into it in a second, but Dude, the lake was fishing really tough because I think day one there was about, I think it was 30 something limits out of 176 anglers, which is, when you think about that ratio, that's kind of insane.
Yeah, yeah. And remember, I told you that on the
You
phone the other
did.
night.
You
I said
called it.
the previous year I'd gotten 7th at the Bassmaster Kayak Series on Eufaula. It was held on May 1st. Russ Snyder's took the win in that one. And I told you, I said, Bailey, 25 guys out of 101 got limits. So don't be discouraged when you're getting up, get down there, and it's going to be super tough because I mean, a limit for 2 days in a 2-day tournament is going to cash you a check down there. And of course, you took it a step further and just went ahead and won the whole thing. But anyway, we knew it was going to be tough for sure. And that, I think, having that mentally, knowing that ahead of time, even during your pre-fishing, was hopefully it helped a little bit, knowing that it's just the deal down there. It's not always easy, even this time of year.
Yeah, and so like we had that conversation, and like every prediction you had was nail on the head, like you were right on. But I doubted you. I will say I doubted you the first day of practice because I launch the kayak and I see low 60s and it got up to like 65 water temps that day. And within like the first 30 minutes, I was blasting him on a frog and dumped a 7+ pounder on a frog. And I'm like, dude, this is just gonna be crazy. People are gonna catch them all over the place. And I had that mentality of like, this is gonna be so much fun, but like it's gonna be hard to cash a check in this one just because it seemed like fish were everywhere. That was until the thunderstorms rolled in the first night that literally pounded the place for like almost 10 hours straight of just pouring rain. And so proceeding to that, the next day was just the lake became mud, like less than an inch of viz. Like you could put your jig halfway through the water, you couldn't see, your black and blue trailer, but like it was just gone. The water was that muddy. So I started running like a bunch of different creeks and stuff because my plan going down there was I was assuming that these fish would be either late on the bed or just coming off the bed into a post spawn phase. So being the guy that I am electronically, like I love to find them offshore. I was gonna go graph like for most nearby brush piles around like the biggest most prominent spawning areas in the lake, and that obviously changed in practice when I saw the water temperatures. So I started running different creeks, and I think I was telling you guys, and both of you guys on the phone, I think I had 2 fish in like 3 days. It was horrible. And the last day of practice, from that plan, I drove the entirety of the lake. I pulled a Drew Gregory and checked every single possible creek on the entire lake, just looking for clear water. I think that was like the biggest key at that point, was to get some visibility for some fish to actually see your bait. And what I did was I couldn't find anything successful on the main lake. So looking at the river, I was like, well, at least if I'm not going to have visibility, I'm going to look for current to have something in my favor to try to get these fish to eat. And what I did was looking at Google Earth at the camp one night, the night before the last morning of practice, I should say, because we got like a half day. I looked at Google Earth and I used the history feature. And I think it was like 2015 or 16. Where I looked upriver, like way, way upriver, and I see one of these creek arms coming back. Actually, the Alabama guys down there call them chutes, which I think I like that term, shoot over a creek. Way in the back, looked like it cleared up. And I was like, either it just hadn't gotten muddy yet on Google Earth, or this actually stays clear. And I figured it's only, I've basically checked everything. I might as well at least go try it. And so I launch and I go and I check that area and I round this corner and it's all mud. And there's just like a hard line where it turns from mud to like this clear tannic Florida water. And I see like beautiful green, healthy hyacinth mats for like a 200-yard stretch. And I see a little bit shad popping here and there. So I just pick up a spinnerbait. And like one of my first casts paralleling this hyacinth mat was like almost a 5-pounder. So I'm like, oh, and I see one with it. So I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I'm not even going to bother fishing this stuff because this is the best thing I've found all week. Tournament's tomorrow. So what I did actually was I had my Helix and my auto chart chip in my Helix, and Lake Master just showed basically a flat that goes back like 2 to 3 foot. And so what I did is I graphed and I auto charted the mats to see which one was, if there was one that might be deeper than the rest, because throughout the week, obviously the water rose and got muddy. But eventually, and it's usually about a week out or so when things start drawing back down, the water was going to recede and fall. And I wanted to find the one that was deepest. That way, if there were a bunch of fish in this area, they would congregate on that deepest mat. So I auto charted it. That way I could have a peace of mind because I knew if I'm going to live here, I'm not bringing the graph out the 2 days because I want to have at least the most, like, I should say the less impact possible. I don't want my sonar pinging like crazy while I'm trying to fish these mats. So I auto charted it and found that this 150-yard stretch was just a foot deeper than the rest, which came in clutch for day 2. So going into day 1, I showed up to this chute that we're fishing, and there's 2 other guys that are fishing this area. One guy turned out to be Brady Store, who was leading after day 1. Didn't realize that was him until after the tournament day.
Yeah, good dude, by the way. Nebraska, he's really all in on this stuff. Younger guy. He stayed actually with me at Santee, Hobie Santee at the house there. So good dude. So shout out to Brady. Had a good finish as well, by the way. So good job, Brady.
Yeah, he finished 4th from Nebraska. Super, super cool dude. We'll get into more about Brady in a second. And then it was his buddy that him and I fished or launched the same ramp at Toledo Bend. So we were joking about that, and I had known him. So unfortunately, he didn't have a good day 1 in there. But I started way above the hyacinth mats because the banks leading up to it were really hard. So there was a big shad spawn going down, but I learned quickly that there was too much shad. Like you would just be snagging shad every cast. So your bait was not getting in front of fish. At least your percentage of getting in front of fish just wasn't worth it. So, but as soon as I finally got to that hyacinth mat, I started catching fish, and I had my limit on day 1 within like an hour. And I checked, I used to be, with the local tournaments, I never check standings whatsoever because they're 1-day tournaments, and I can be a head case where, if I see I'm winning or not winning, it'll affect me one way or another and affect how I fish. And I don't want that to happen.
You got to burn it down anyway. It's 1 day, burn it all down. What's it matter? Yeah,
exactly. So this for the day 2 events, what I've been realizing and that I want to do is check it on day 1 so that I can see. I think it was really important for this event because I think bites were hard to come by for a lot of folks, and the bites seemed to die at 10 a.m. because of that shad spawn. I had all my limit, and I checked it at like 10 o'clock, and I was sitting in first. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to fish anymore in here. I'm going to head out and fish new water. And if I need to come back, I'm going to keep checking the standings. And if I need to come back to stay in contention, I will. But I stayed in contention, and Brady made a huge call like late in the day that put him in first, and I was tied for second. And that's how the day ended. I didn't have to go back there, which I think was a clutch move on my part leaving. That was when I realized that it was Brady back there in the same area as me. So day 1, tied for second, but was third because of the tiebreaker. The guy in front of me had a bigger fish than I did. He had a 20-incher, which that was something I realized looking at Tourney X after day 1 was the top 10. Almost everyone had a 20-incher. I didn't. Biggest I had was a 19, so I had a consistent bag. And I knew that day 2, if I could get a limit and get one of those 20-inch plus bites, that I would have a shot. And so we'll get into that in a second. But dude, the most peaceful launch ever of any kayak tournament was day 2 when Brady and I realized we're the only ones that are going to be back there. And we're taking our sweet time, no racing, having a great conversation going back. Because, dude, we realized we talked because when I realized it was him back there, I went up to him at the ramp and just made sure to have the conversation. So I wasn't stepping on his toes. He wasn't stepping on mine. Acknowledged that we both got a chance. And he was fishing completely different stuff than I was. So we ended up actually like starting on the same side of like the spot, like back into the chute.
Slough.
Yeah,
chute,
slough. Yeah, he was on the left side. I was on the right. He was fishing laydowns. I was fishing hyacinth mats. And he left pretty quick after I put 3 13-inchers in the boat in like 5 minutes and then a 4-pounder. And then I looked back and he was gone. I don't think he liked seeing me catch fish that fast. But I got a limit within the first 20 to 25 minutes. And when my 4th fish was an 18-incher, and I'm like, this is going to be clutch. If I can fill a limit, I'm pretty much guaranteed to stay in the top 10, unless people just blast them. But moving along, like literally probably 5 minutes after I caught that 18, I caught a 15, filled my limit. I felt really good about the day. I'm like, now I just need to catch big ones because I need to get rid of these 13 inchers and go down the bank, maybe another 50 yards. And I catch a 6.5 pounder, 21 3/4 incher, like, and it ate right at the boat. I'll show. I mean, obviously it's going to be in the Chasing Hardware episode, but I flipped out.
Count your blessings, son.
Yeah,
count your blessings.
Yeah, I was like, it was one of those bites where you get it in the net and you're like, it's like as a tournament angler, you know this feeling. You're like, we got a shot, boys. Like,
everything on the spinnerbait, everything.
Every single bite was on a spinnerbait paralleling that hyacinth mat, as flush as I could get it.
Yeah.
The best bites I got, and I noticed this too, like once I got bites, but also looking at the GoPro footage, it had to have like an irregularity in that mat. So where I was able to cast past it, like say it's a point in that mat, and angle my line and my rod to let that spinnerbait come under the mat. And that when I was get floored.
Yeah.
So that was the key, was focus on those irregularities in that mat. But that's where they were sitting, and there was like a very subtle shad spawn going in that hyacinth mat, and enough of a shad spawn to get fish in there, but not too much enough so that I could actually get my bait in front of some fish. And that seemed to be the key. And I had my limit on Sunday, probably in the first hour and a half. I couldn't submit them all until like 10 o'clock because I didn't have service for most of the time. But like the rest of the day, I was catching, I called up, I think twice, 2 or 3 times with like 15, 16 inchers. Then the rest of the day, I could only catch like 13s and 12s and like little ones. But from like 10:30 when this is a whole different story. I felt really bad for Steve Fields, like the camera guy. My phone was blowing up off the hook, and that's kind of how I started to feel like, especially it was sort of blowing up after I submitted that 6.5 pounder, that people were starting to like text me and post about it. And, and I started getting phone calls. I got like 5 phone calls in a row, and I'm like, which one of my buddies in their right mind is calling me right now? They know how I operate. Like, I won't answer for 1, and 2, it'll just screw me up to talk on the phone, which I think is against the rules anyways. And, I finally keep buzzing. I went to go put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I see it's this unlisted number from Gainesville, Florida. And I was like, huh. I forcefully just ended the call on purpose to maybe like let them get the point, like, I'm not going to answer you. And it turns into a voicemail. And I'm like, well, all right, I'll just click on the voicemail because it transcripts like what they say. It's like, hey, this is Steve, like we're the photographer for Hobie. Like, can we we're trying to take pictures of you. And I'm like, oh crap. Like I felt bad because I was ignoring this guy. But I had a feeling like from then that the camera boat was looking for me, that something's good is happening right now. But I tried to force myself to stay in the mindset of somebody's going to catch me. I still got to keep upgrading, like, because you can't with those hammers, dude. You can't stay comfortable. But I held the lead, and rest of the day from 10:30, basically when the camera boat showed up until the end of the day, I never caught a single bass. I joked with Steve and said that it was his fault, that because he showed up, that the fish were camera shy, and that's why I wasn't catching fish. But I ended up meeting up at the end of the day. I rounded this corner and saw Brady right as both of our alarms went off that the tournament day was over. And Brady come up to me and he's like, "Oh, congrats, dude." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, when the standing shut off, you were 7 inches ahead of everybody." And I was like, "Well, don't tell me that." Because then I look on Facebook and I see Ron Champion's like 22.5-inch giant. I'm like, oh, great. Lovely. Late day, like submission in the last hour. And Brady gives me one of his custom made handmade spinner baits as a present. Like I have a clip of it. It was kind of funny.
That's cool.
But we get to awards, and this is before AJ and Ron both scared the crap out of me because I didn't think I had it won because I saw Ron's late day calls. And we get down to Ron and I at the awards, and Ron leans over and whispers to me. He goes, "Would I scare you if I told you I had 2 giant calls in the last hour?" I'm like, "Oh, dang, you won this thing, dude." Yeah. And then AJ starts it off with like, Ron came in huge with these massive last hour calls to like bump him up. And I'm like, oh, dang, I really lost this thing. And then he goes, "But it wasn't enough to take over Bailey's limit." I'm like, holy crap. And then my brain went to a fog and proceeded with my horrible stage speech.
No, it was good, man. AJ did a good job building some drama for sure, because you got to do that. You know what I mean? He's got to do that. That the standings went off and you were in the lead by a lot. So you were great on stage. Don't sweat it for sure. And I know you're going to be even better in all these recaps because you're going to have more time now to get everybody in. So
Andy's reaction exactly was how I felt during that.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Oh, Talladega night. Oh, that's funny.
There's Steve now. Steve's coming on. So now
we got Steve in there.
The fish are going to stop biting now that Steve's in here.
That's right.
What's up, Steve?
But yeah, that was my event. I mean, I think it really reinforced that theory of like, if you're slightly on them in practice, you're probably going to have a good tournament day. But like, if you're like dialed in practice, you're probably going to suck.
It often works that way. Andy, you got any comments or anything you want to quiz them on after hearing the whole story?
Well, yeah. So like, I know what you were doing, right? The spinnerbait, but how bad? I know how you are. So how bad did your head spin during your really cruddy practice?
I don't think it really spun. It was more like I was kind of thinking that it's like, I'm going to go fish free, I guess, because like, what do I have to lose? Because I'm not on anything.
Yeah.
Can you tell them the truth? Tell them the truth, Bailey, about how every time you called me, what happened? Every time you were on the phone with me during practice.
I don't know what to do.
A horrible practice, quote unquote, is what he's telling me. And then all of a sudden, what happens?
So I would call Drew and I'm like, dude, this sucks. Like, I hate this place because I couldn't catch a bass. And as soon as I would tell Drew that, I'd catch a bass.
Yeah, I think you actually lost that 7-8 pounder on the phone with me. I think maybe not. Maybe it wasn't.
No,
that
I called you right after that.
Right after,
because we were on the phone because we hung up, and like 2 minutes later, I hooked into that one. So probably if we stayed on the phone, I would have landed it. But it's because you had to go. I think you had to give your kid a bath or something like that.
Yeah.
Because you did that, that's why I lost the biggest fish
because I was a responsible parent. Trying to clean my kid.
Well, you were not a responsible friend. You should have stayed on the phone with me.
I know. My bad. And look where it got you. Just a big W. $11,000 later. Yeah. What a jerk I am.
It's funny though, like all the people that are always like, I had this horrible practice, but I have some clues, are the people that always do really well in tournaments because they know how to expand on the clues once the Derby day comes. So kudos to you, Bailey.
Dude, I'm one of those guys, man. I really am. I'm never quote unquote on anything in practice. It's because Bailey alluded to it. I spend most of my practice driving around the entire fishery looking at everything. And I know it's not, I mean, if you don't have a lot of experience catching bass and you're not a real veteran seasoned angler and don't know what you're looking for, that does you no good. No good. You need to be on the water catching fish and honing your skill and figuring out an area. But if you really understand the bass and what you're specifically looking for, to catch them the way I like to catch them, that's kind of where I look to look for water where I can power fish and whatnot. But anyway, usually I'm not catching a lot of fish on pre-fishing because I'm popping into a place real quick, sampling it, just a buffet, if you will, just kind of sampling, getting out, moving to the next one. And then on tournament day is when I really just know exactly what I got. But what's cool is if I don't have anything by, 3-4 hours in, I've always got an exit strategy to take, the kayak out, load it up, crank up the Tacoma, move somewhere else that I sampled and thought had a lot of potential as well. And then hopefully land on them enough to be like in contention and that striking range for a check or the win. And now I really know the deal because I don't want to burn up all the fish for the event. So that's kind of my take on it and strategy. And my tournament was a 1 day. This Bassmaster, this particular one was a 1 day. They have some there too. So I had to learn a little bit more in pre-fishing and catch a few more fish than I normally would. But anyway, Bailey, so I got some stuff for you on your tournament here.
I want to add to that really fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what's really cool with my job is I get to talk to a lot of like these pros that I find success because I write the press releases. So naturally I get to talk to the winners. When Seth Feider won his AOI last year, we were writing up this press release on him. One of the biggest things that's resonated with me was he goes, I never want to figure them out in practice because what it does is it makes me too dialed in on something that I ignore other opportunistic chances of catching fish. So he goes, I want to figure out a few clues and put them together in the tournament because it keeps my mind open to all the options in front of me.
Bam. 100%.
And that hit me hard at Eufaula, where it's
That's right.
where I find just a couple clues and then let me just, figure it out on tournament day. Obviously it's a little bit different being able to fire up a 250 and, figure it out a little bit faster, but I was just hoping for the best on day one.
Yeah.
But he's not scared. That's the thing. He's an experienced enough angler and confident enough in his skills. He's not scared to go into a derb without just smashing them in practice. He just has enough clues to kind of know where he can move to and adjust, and he's just not scared. That's kind of the point, I think, where I've gotten, and I think, you're there. I mean, any of the top anglers, they're just not. I mean, look at John Cox. He goes tournament to tournament without practice sometimes.
One day of practice.
One day maybe. I mean,
half a day.
He can figure it out. So anyway, that's pretty cool, Bailey. That's a good point. But I had a question, or a couple comments here. One, you're in a slough, a slough. What you said right there is pretty interesting. You're calling it a creek, but really that slough, and I kind of know where you are, but just so you know, a lot of these sloughs are eventually they get filled in and they become oxbows that are like almost even separated from the main lake and river. But until that happens, they're sloughs. And when the main river's flowing down, they're back the opposite direction. It's backwards and back upstream. They don't muddy up as bad. But the other cool thing is at the top of them, which is where you were, a slough like that is naturally, it's not really a creek. There's no flowing water coming into it, really. Not a lot. It's barely a little bit usually, if any. And when it does come in, a lot of times it's swamped out coming in. So it's spread out through the swamp wide. So therefore you don't have one chute of water creating mud. So what you did is you found the clear water. It's getting nice and filtered. It's not like a big enough creek, like I said, a big enough drainage of a watershed to create any mud. And it's all forest there pretty much. So you're not going to get any man-made runoff. So you found this sort of, there's a few little secrets you could do to always find clear water on any fishery, no matter how bad the storms were. And obviously at some point, clear water, it becomes a necessity to catch fish, because there's a reason why bass don't live in the main Mississippi River, on the main river, all the way down in New Orleans or Louisiana. You don't see people fishing the bank on the main river, right? They're all in the oxbows and the creeks and the backwaters. They don't like to be in that kind of chocolate milk, or they don't feed in it when they are there. They wait for it to get clear. So in this tournament, you had to find that clear water, and you did it, man. That's pretty cool. I want to know, I'm sure people out here listening, what's your setup? Tell me exactly about the spinnerbait, the blade combination, and your rod and reel setup, just so people out there that are also kayak fishing, throwing spinnerbaits might glean a little info off that.
Yeah, so I'll start with the rod. The rod is actually an Alpha Angler. It was an Alpha Angler clutch, which is a 7.5 medium fast. But if they say medium fast, it is not a medium. Andy can attest to that. It's more like a medium heavy, if any, just kind of like almost a blend between a medium and a medium heavy, where you have enough backbone to set that hook, but enough parabolic bend to the rod where they can dig as hard as they want. If you got beef enough line and you know how to manage fish, they're not going to come off. So that was the rod. And then I was throwing a Abu Garcia Revo SX. It was a 7.3-1 and 17-pound Seaguard Vizex. And that was in a half-ounce white accent spinnerbait. I think it was the River Special, because it was big gold and silver willow blades. And I wanted bigger blades over anything smaller, even like trying with Colorados. And I liked that gold in there because with that Florida, and then Andy pointed this out too when I told him on the phone that I liked gold over it, was because that water looked such like Florida tannic water, that gold flashes so much better.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it would have mattered too much if I had double silver or had gold, but to me, the gold looked way better. And it was more of just like a personal confidence thing than anything else.
Exactly.
That was the setup. And I had a paddle tail swim bait on the back of it too.
Cool. And that tannic water is another clue that you were draining a swamp, like a swampy wooded area, not really a true creek, because all those tannins get in the water, and that's how you get that dark color. So that's pretty cool, man. That's a cool deal. Yeah. A good setup. A lot of folks out there, you're in a bigger, Hobie Pro Angler. It's a little more stout than the little Crescent Ultralight I was in. But even having said that, in a kayak, if you're kayak fishing, you really want to make sure you're getting the, almost a little one step heavier action on a lot of your rods and reel setup, because your kayak is able to move when you set the hook. So you got a nice stout rod, it sounds like. And what did you say? What kind of line you were using again?
17-pound Florida.
17. Yeah. So, and you're probably really laying into them as hard as you can because, I mean, again, your kayak's moving. Yeah, if you can. So, and a lot of times you're pedaling, even moving a little bit forward with them, kind of like on a bass boat, your trolling motors moving forward. And therefore, you see those guys, really have to almost walk back sometimes to really continue to drive that hook home. So, no, that's cool, man. A good setup. So I caught a few on a spinnerbait as well, and we'll get into my story. But it's interesting. I like to see some of the similarities, things we were doing similar. What was your water temp?
The water temp back there was 75.
Okay.
So it was a big difference from the rest of the water I found.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, that goes back to what we were saying, because I told you both on the phone that what I wanted to find was exactly what you just pointed to, Drew, was finding these creeks, these arms, these sloughs that didn't have a creek running into it. That way there was, especially if they were north facing. So if they were pointing north and the water flows, obviously currents flowing north to south, if they're pointing north and there's no creeks leading into them, the chances are the back of that is going to be clearer than the rest of it. And that's exactly what I found back there.
Visibility. It was how, in your opinion, what was it, like 2-3 foot of visibility? Yeah.
3 foot.
So you had some really good clear water.
I could almost see bottom.
And another thing I told Bailey too on the phone was, as that main lake system drops, it's going to continue to suck the mud out of those creek systems or sloughs or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
It's going to suck the mud out of them first before it sucks them out of the main drainage systems in the lake, because it has no flow coming in. It's just flowing out as the lake drops.
Yeah, it's pulling it down. Yeah, and it's pulling more of that any clear water that's left in the woods to kind of trickle in from that heavy rain. It's going to just kind of get pulled even harder, even giving more clear water back there. So,
yeah, and that was why I was so happy that I auto charted that stuff, because the water was falling. It was visibly, you could see on day one that it was starting to fall. And what I found is every day from where I found them in practice to where they were Sunday, they were closer and closer and closer towards, where that ditch really starts to get deeper, where there's almost the mouth of it. The stretch that I won on Sunday was literally probably 50 to 75 yards long. And that was the deepest one I found. And what I think it did is the ones that I tried that were in the back that were a little bit shallower, I didn't catch many fish off of them. I think all those fish, because that water was falling, condensed on that deeper mat. And that was the key.
Any signs of spawning on these fish, or were they completely done?
Some of them were had no bellies whatsoever to them.
But no tattered fins.
No, they've been done for a while, I think.
Right. Well, that water back there definitely gets a lot warmer. It sounds like it sounds also like you're saying you had tree protection, wind protection from the northwesterly winds that typically bring cold air, from north to the south. And it sounds like you've got sunlight on their area, because similar to what I'm about to tell you in my story, the sun, rises and sets more in the southern kind of southern part of the northern hemisphere, whatever you want to call it. It's more to our south. You know what I mean? Going through. So you had this south facing slough, which is getting pounded with sun, wind protection, which is really exactly what I actually found on Grand Lake. So that's pretty cool, man. We kind of did a lot of similarities here. So
heck yeah. Well, dude, let's dive into your win on Grand Lake, which has been a lot of hype, a lot of buzz around Grand Lake this year with the Red Crest and all that. So you guys were literally like a week or two after them?
No, I mean, it was a few weeks. It was because I was fishing on the Harris chain, I believe, the Bassmaster Kayak series on Harris chain when the Red Crest was going on. I'm pretty sure I was fishing somewhere. Maybe it was Santee Cooper. I don't know, for Hobie, but I was fishing because I didn't get a chance to watch the final day of Red Crest, or maybe even the final couple days, which is actually kind of going to bring it all full circle here. I ended up, winning the tournament on a jig with a green pumpkin jig. And then I go back and I'm listening to the Bass University episode with Bobby Lane. And I didn't even know he was throwing a green jig with a green pumpkin trailer until after I kind of found the same thing on Grand. And you might think, well, that's crazy. You're like a month later. What similarities does it have? It actually has a lot. They had an insane warm front come in before that. At some point after it got real warm in their tournament, and the fish just moved shallow. Actually, on that final day, I went back and watched the last like hour or something of that, so I could see what happened. But they got really warm and fish moved up shallow. And then ever since Red Crest, Oklahoma actually had quite a bit of cold weather, which pushed the fish back. And then they kind of came forward again during the Bassmaster event. But yeah, I mean, on my tournament, Bailey, I did something similar to you and similar to a lot of people in Oklahoma. I threw a spinnerbait. So I'll hold up here. This is a Z-Man Sling Blades spinnerbait. And I changed the blade and put a Colorado blade on it instead of a willow. And it was a painted chartreuse Colorado blade. I added a second skirt. So that looks like a lot of bulky material. That's because there's a second skirt on that for more water displacement, more visibility. Because unlike you, I've got, 6, 8, foot of visibility. And then this is a Z-Man Minnows trailer here with the dude. I slammed my finger on the door. It looks hideous, man. Blood's underneath there. Sorry, that's nasty. But anyway, you can see here is a chartreuse white with chartreuse tail. So the thing is really gaudy, right? Bright, ugly, ½ ounce, so you can move it kind of slow. And just for me with rivers, I actually bend this part down. I actually take it and kind of bend it down and get it nice and streamlined. And this is more so for river fishing and current, but I ended up fishing on the lake here, and I just like doing that to keep the blades close to the hook anyway. So that was what I was throwing in pre-fishing, and I found a spawning pocket very similar to you, Bailey. I would say total, the area of this pocket I caught my fish in was probably 50, 75 yards total is where the main juice was. And it was a south-facing bank with and the south-facing bank of this pocket was the best part of it. Okay. So you had wind protection from that northwest wind. You had, so it made the water calm, and calm water warms faster than choppy water and waves and river water, which by the way, I pre-fished the rivers and I had backup plans to go there. And, you just got to go where the fish are. I know everyone thinks I fish a river or a creek in every single tournament, but I don't. And this is a situation where I felt my best odds were to fish here in the lake. And it was actually a spawning pocket off of a very large cove off the main lake. So bass boats, anybody could have been here. Never saw another angler. Saw one bass boat kind of closely skirt my area, but not really go in there on tournament day. But anyway, it was that south facing bank warming up with the sun. But on pre-fishing, when I went in there, I found it was on Wednesday, the first day we were allowed to get on the water. So I go in there and I catch 4 fish in the 16 to 17 inch range, very fat, pre-spawn. And they were just train wrecking the spinnerbait, just absolutely hammering this thing. And I'm all excited. That's pretty good. I knew that Grand was going to take, you get 90 inches, which is about, I thought before I got there, I needed 95 to win. But then when I got there and saw fat and short and kind of stocky and fat the fish are in Grand, I realized I don't need 95. I need 90, because 95 is typically 20 something pounds, 23. And that's what was winning tournaments. And then I realized, well, here 20 pounds is like 90 inches. It's going to be like 90, somewhere around there. So I wanted to get above 90, and I thought that would get me the win, because it was winning any bass boat tournament. As a matter of fact, there was 2 days before our tournament, Thursday and Friday. I didn't even realize this till afterwards. There was a championship, a 300 boat championship, 2 days, 300 boats pounding Grand Lake. And it took one day, one boat had 20 pounds, another day a boat had 23. But basically anybody that was getting, 15, 16, 17 pounds was looking real good. So I thought, man, this is, if I could just get 90. So that's what I was shooting for. And I pre-fished and I caught 4 there and I left. I said, that's all I need to see. I don't need to burn it down. It's even though it's Wednesday, I could have caught more. And usually I would leave after a couple, maybe in a little small pocket like that. I would just left after a couple. But like I said, 1-day tournament, I wanted to really see what kind of size was there. And they were hitting this thing hard, but they were hitting it into the ditch that was leading into this spawning pocket, more off of the bank, not on the bank. And so, of course, tournament day comes rolling around. I wake up in the morning. I got this bad boy tied on. I got a chatterbait tied on. I think I'm going to do what was going on Wednesday, and they're just going to be smashing it. And I had a plan B, a similar pocket up the lake that I wanted to take out and move to. That honestly, in pre-fishing, I caught them really good in that place, and I think it could have been even better. But I never had to leave this one little area, because I get there, and even though I wasn't catching them right away, and in pre-fishing it was more the afternoon or evening, I found this place, so I wasn't too like frustrated yet. But early on, I make the first passes. I throw in that ditch, little drain area, kind of leading into it, and nothing. And I was like, how in the world did I catch like 2 or 3 fish in 4 casts here the other day and nothing today? This is insane. And so, and the water had come up about almost a foot from Wednesday, because we got a lot of rain as well. So I'm not like too frustrated yet, but I'm like, all right, I'm going to fish around the whole thing and just see if I can. They couldn't have gone far, right? I mean, where could they have gone? This isn't a big area, and I don't know where else they would have gone. This looks like a spawning pocket, like they were going to stay here. And the water didn't get insanely warmer or cooler. It just kind of stayed about the same. So I was like, they got to be here. And I catch one on the spinnerbait, but it was the weirdest bite. And I got this on GoPro too. So it bit right at, when I have 6 inches of line left, I pulled it up and I just about to set the rod down to grab another rod. So I wound it up to about 6 inches, which is a little bit shorter, maybe 8 than I normally even would for a cast, because I was about to set it down and the fish bites it as it's getting out of the water, but not even like thrash. It was just like this little just slurp. And I was like, I just lifted it in the kayak. It snapped the line just because it had such short line. It was so green. I cover up on it like a loose fumble, trying to keep it in the kayak because I'm in this little this little 10-foot Crescent ultralight kayak, which was another key to the tournament. Just being in a small stealthy kayak, it was just best suited for where I was and where I launched and stuff. So anyway, the first fish kind of gave me a clue. That's a much different bite and mannerism. I didn't know what that meant yet, but again, like we said before, like we just need clues sometimes. Once you fish long enough for bass, you just need clues. And I just kept fishing, didn't think too much of it until I worked my way around some of the other spots. I'd caught some pre-fishing and it looked really good. Nothing. And then I get a bite again on that same spinner bait, same way, just slow, sluggish, slurped it in, maybe almost to the boat, like 4 feet of line out this time, 4 or 5. And just brought it right in again, and the same length, 16 3/4. So I got 2 decent fish, but the bite was just off. And so then I'd finished kind of circling that whole pocket. And I'm like, man, 2 fish, expecting more than that. When you go there pre-fishing in 20 minutes, catch 4, you expect more than just 2 in, probably an hour. So I leave that little area and kind of fish my way out because I hadn't expanded a whole lot during pre-fishing. I expanded and wanted to also let it rest because I knew later in the day was when the bite was. I didn't want to give up on the spot quite yet. I left there, and then there's this one tree just outside of it that was the water gets in Oklahoma lakes where there's buck brush and there's willows and there's a lot of bases of trees. Well, this one was like a willow tree that had 4 sort of trunks that were about 4 or 5 inches wide, and 3 or 4 of them had got gnawed off by a beaver or something right above the water line. It was probably 2 foot there, 2 foot depth. And it was just too hard to cover with a moving bait, with a spinner bait or a chatterbait. You just couldn't really get it in there properly and really milk it in the prime area. So I said, you know what? I had this jig set up. This is a Z-Man cross-size jig, and it was a 3/8 ounce. This is actually a 1/2 ounce here, but it was a 3/8 with this Pro Crawls trailer on it. And I had it set up on like a 7'4" heavy action Omen. Not Omen, man, it might have been Omen. I can't remember. It might have been a Fate rod, my 13 fishing rod. So
sorry to interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
What's is it the Omen that they came out with the new series, or is it the Envy?
There's so much.
There's
new
one
stuff.
new rod lineup that 13 came out with it. The new series of it that is like people are really hyping up.
It might have been there might be a new Envy. Because I bet you. See, I use the Omens and the Fates and the Defies, which are not the highest price point 13 rods, but for me in a kayak and my power fishing techniques, plus the fact that I break a lot of rods, and I use a lot of, just braid and power fishing. I don't really need that sensitivity of those higher end rods, but the Envies are incredible. And the Muse, all those that they make the higher end are amazing, but that's probably what they're hyping. But the Fate V, it might've been the Fate V3 because I think it was a white rod I had, and that's the new white one. But anyway, I pitched in there and I was using, I think like 16 or maybe it was 20 FC Sniper Sunline. And I had 30-pound braid on the spinnerbait, by the way. It was SX1 from Sunline. But anyway, I flip into this bush and, I don't know if it was a God thing or what, but man, if I don't have this bite here, guys, the jig just dumped, the line just jumped, and it took off out of that bush, out of deeper water. And I just laid in it, set the hook, and it was like an 18 1/4. And I caught a couple other small ones, by the way, on a spinnerbait, filled my limit, a couple small ones. So I had a limit at this point, but nothing, that none of them were hitting it like they should have. That's why I went to that jig and milked this bush. And that gave me the clue that maybe I need to work that area again, but try a different bait and try this jig. And so I went after I caught that fish, and that was a real nice. I mean, 4.5 pound. It was 18 and a quarter. It was fat and tall. And so I go back into my main area and I skip a jig under by some buckbrush, and I'm talking 8-10 inches of water. And again, just thump, and it just takes off. And I set the hook, and I mean, I was so close to this fish. I mean, like I said, I got real low visibility. I'm making short casts, and it just comes right in the boat, and it gets off in the boat, in the kayak. And so I jump on it again, and I've never really lost a fish in a tournament, and really never had one flop except for one that was real small and never mattered. But this fish somehow, even though I'm just covered up on it, squirms out and jumps out of the kayak. And my kayak is right up against the bank, and it actually gets out in the deeper side where the pocket is. But for whatever reason, it's disoriented. It actually goes under the kayak and swims up onto the bank like fast, goes onto the bank and squirming and flapping. I'm trying to like get over there to grab it, but it was too late. I couldn't get it. It just went back into the water and found its way out. But it was a solid like 17 to 18 inch fish. You know, one you don't want to lose on tournament day, especially when you have a 13 and a 15. My two small ones were 13 to 15 that I had to get rid of. So wasn't thrilled about it, but I at least had another bite on the jig. So there you go. And show that, yeah, one of those 18 and a quarters was pretty fat, and we'll get that 20 incher here in a second. But that fish gave me the clue to keep working that jig. And 10 minutes later, I catch my second 18 and a quarter.
Oh, dude, you are risky business with this one right here.
Well, the bank's over there on my left. So, I mean, where's it going to go? Flop on the bank? I mean, come on. But, and my kayak is smashed. Like my weight's on the left-hand side, so there's nowhere it can go. But also whenever you see a picture of a fish with me that has no hand on it and it's not in the actual bottom of the kayak, that's like one of the last pictures I've taken once I've gotten my safeties. So I already had that fish good to go. So yeah. But anyway, the jig started to fire, and every bite was a clue. Like that buckbrush fish that I lost, it taught me, like, dude, these fish are so freaking shallow. Remember I told you in pre-fishing they were out in the middle more. They were in that drain. Now they have moved. And why have they moved up? I mean, I'm piecing it all together in my head. Oh my goodness. The water has risen almost a foot since Wednesday when I was in here. It's moved up to full pool. It wasn't a full pool. These fish know it's like a Hartwell or other lakes. I don't know, like that. I mean, the fish know when it gets to full pool, and a lot of them wait. I know it sounds crazy, but they're like salmon. They go back to the same places. They know the same water levels. They know when it gets to full pool in April or May. They wait till that point. A lot of them do. And their bodies just time that way. So once they have their eggs, the eggs start to form again inside of them. The moment the eggs are gone, they start to form. Well, that creates this perfect timing where they can have the lake at the right level again, and consistent level, not a bunch of fluctuating. So with the water rose, more fish had moved in actually, and they weren't eating. They were either one of two things. I was catching the males I caught had tattered fins, and that right there was I don't know, one we're looking at there, probably a female, but a tattered fin nonetheless. If it was a male, it was a big one. But you can see there was spawning activity happening. The water was almost 60 degrees, around 60. So I realized then, since the water had risen and the juice bank, like I said, was that south-facing bank, there were some roots. I'm not talking like big trees, just small kind of buckbrushy roots, but they were high enough above the water now that kind of like when you're noodling for catfish, you know, you can kind of imagine the roots are kind of undercuts, especially in rivers, but there was little undercuts. And I promise you, I think these bass were wallering out undercuts into the bank because they had a south sun that was still shining through and getting full sunlight penetration into that bank. And they felt protected to spawn back in that cave, if you will, rather than out in the open, because then they just had to protect and guard from one entrance, so to speak. So because they were right up in it, and they needed to spawn shallow because the water is so dingy over there. They have to spawn shallow to get the sunlight penetration to be able to react on the eggs that they need. So it all started to click in my head. It makes sense. I'm like, oh my goodness, they're spawning or they're feeding. I don't care, but they're picking up the jig because they're up there getting their nest ready. And I don't care, you know, if they're, like I said, if they're eating it or if they're just moving it. The second the line jumps, I hit them, you know. So I ended up culling and catching a lot of fish. You know, I probably caught 14, maybe 13, 14, 15 fish, and every one of them was, you know, 16 inches and up, and pretty much almost nearly 3 pounders. and up. So that's kind of the deal, man.
I like this feature here that they've added. The estimated weight
Yes.
for 91.5 inches is 17.5 pounds.
Yes. And I'm going to talk about that for a second because I mentioned
Dude, you
that too.
won by a huge margin. I totally forgot about that.
And that was actually, so listen, here's why that was actually 20 pounds. I'm going to go ahead. I'm not saying this just so it sounds like I caught 20 pounds, but it was actually probably 20 because that length to weight calculator that I actually helped Dwayne on Tourney X. I thought of this idea and I was like, hey, can you put the estimated weight in there if I give you a link to weight calculator? And he said, yeah, man, we can pull that off. So he did, but it doesn't account for pre-spawn. Okay. It's an average. It does not account for pre-spawn. So you got to add after 5 fish of that size, you can certainly add a little bit. And I'm going to give myself a pound and a half extra because of pre-spawn. But then on top of that, I'm going to add a little bit more because I had other fish that were 16 3/4, 2 other fish that were 16 3/4, and maybe another one that was like right around like 17 as well. Maybe another 17 and a 16.5. Now in a 5 fish derb, you don't care if it's 16.5. You just care it weighs more than the other fish that it was 17.25.
Yeah.
So if you start throwing some of those away and actually pulled my 5 heaviest, I probably had, if you, like I said, you add a pound and a half from the 17.5 for pre-spawn for that many fish. You're up to like whatever, 19 pounds ish. And then I maybe had another half a pound or a pound, depending on how fat some of the other ones were. So I had somewhere around 20 pounds, at least in my head. That's what I'm thinking. I got pretty close to that mark.
Heck
so,
yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, like Andy, for someone like yourself that never has been in a kayak, so like inches is kind of like a different, realm for you and many other guys that have only been in a boat their entire career. That calculator's got to be kind of cool for you guys, at least as an easier way to almost keep up. But I don't know. What do you think about that whole system, Andy?
Yeah, I like it. So like a little thing that we have here in Buffalo, and I know Lake Erie, I think all the way to Ohio we have a trophy bass season. And what that means is you can keep or weigh in one fish over 20 inches. So we have 2 fish team derbies, right? And you would be surprised how many 6-pound, 18-inch, 18.5, 19-inch smallmouth get thrown back to have a 4.5-pound, 20 to 20.5-inch fish get weighed in. So it's not surprising to me that a 16 3/4-inch fish weighed more than some of the other ones you have because of that pre-spawn factor. They have eggs, and then you have a couple post spawners or ones that have already dropped their eggs in your bag, right? Those fish are going to weigh significantly less. So, I mean, the inches part, I've never really paid much close attention to it until I started thinking about maybe fishing those 20-inch fish tournaments. I'm like, wow, this one's 20 inches and it weighs 4 pounds. But that one I caught 10 minutes ago is 18.5 and 6.25. Like, it's just wild, the difference.
It is very wild.
Some stocky fish here, dude.
Yeah, there were some good ones. There were some stocky ones for sure. They had some shoulders. The other thing I was going to mention, just to give last little bit of juice here for anybody listening. Well, a couple things. One, this jig, this Z-Man jig. What's interesting, guys, is the Elastec floats. It's buoyant, and this Pro Crawls is very chunky. It's a lot of meat, a lot of plastic. Wow, that's a nice fish right there. But what's cool about this, guys, is it was a 3/8 ounce jig, but it fished like a quarter. And in that shallow water, I wanted it to fall slower, fish like a quarter because of the buoyancy. So it brings that back up. You know what I mean? But for a bait caster, it's always nice to have the more weight for more accuracy and more distance on casting. So it's what's cool. I had better control on the bait caster with the heavier bait. Plus, it's actually heavier than a 3/8 because, man, this, even though it's buoyant, this still the crawfish on the back still weighs. So you're actually throwing heavier than a 3/8, but getting the action of a quarter. That's pretty cool. That the way the Z-Man stuff works, and you can kind of adjust your baits based on that. So,
just
anyway,
real
that's a
quick,
tip there.
Drew.
Yeah,
I didn't know you were a jig fisherman. I always accounted you as like a swim bait, chatterbait, spinner bait guy because you're always in the backwater. So it's kind of cool for me.
I am.
and a lot of these and a lot of our viewers tonight to hear that you caught them on a jig, because I mean it goes back to like the whole tournament pre-fishing thing, right? Is have a open mind but trust your gut, right? Like if you keep your head open and your heart open to what's going on, and then you follow your instincts, you trust your gut. You knew when to switch to that jig bite because of what the fish were telling you. So
Right. A sluggish
instinctual,
bite. Yeah.
yep, instinctual, and that gut feeling like, all right, I need to make a change and figure it out.
Right. And
And
that's right.
and a lot of times that's what separates the guys who finish
Yep.
21st, who would have kept throwing that spinnerbait all day long and scrape together a limit, and then to somebody who won by, what was it, 9 inches.
Right. Yeah.
So
Dude, you're absolutely right. And when you think about it, think about this like this. If those fish were on their beds, they were kind of like almost doing their thing. The males were making beds, which like I said, the males had seriously tattered fins. They were working beds. When I was catching on Wednesday, it was not like that. But think about that bite. It was a sluggish bite, almost like they didn't care to eat it, right?
yep.
Well, what were they doing? I fished that whole pocket with a chatterbait and a spinnerbait, and they weren't thumping it. So what does that tell you? They were probably I didn't know this, but it's muddy water, so I didn't know. They were probably chasing that spinnerbait and getting it out of their zone. You know what I'm saying? Like they just
Yep.
didn't want it there. And I never knew. But then when I throw this in there and actually use this, there's obviously crawfish that have the more curly styled, the hella crawls from Z-Man. You got turbo crawls from Z-Man, the rage crawls, other crawls that have more flapping kind of like, curly ones. Those are good for swim jigs and swimming in the back of chatterbaits. But when I'm going to be fishing in the spring, when I think the fish are spawning or getting close to spawning, I want something that looks and mimics the predator as much as possible, the predator to their eggs, I should say. And so with this crawl, just looking so realistic, and it floats up because it's buoyant. The other thing I did, by the way, is you can see this actually. I rig it where it's kind of coming up a little bit on the end of the hook. So because it floats, the Z-Man stuff floats. It actually sits like this in the water and looks like that, like it's natural position, like a crawfish naturally standing up with his pinchers in defense.
Yeah.
They were not happy with it when it got into their zone. Oh, I mean, it was just unbelievable. Just thump, and it took, they took off with it, trying to get it away from their bed or whatever. And but the other little tip on the jig, and you're right, Andy, I don't fish a lot of this stuff because I seek water where spinnerbaits, buzzbaits, swim baits, chatterbaits all will
Really
work.
fast,
I like to move fast. Yeah, go ahead.
I hate to interrupt you, but before you get into this next point, I want to touch on that point you just made about how you rig the trailer, because I think people might quickly overlook that, which I have done because I'm OCD as heck and I want it perfect on a jig. Yeah. Whereas I was on a media trip with Gary Klein, one of the best to ever fish a jig, and he had them rigged like that. And I was so confused because I thought, in my mind, because I've never heard of anyone doing that before. And that's how I always my brain's OCD. Like I try to be a perfectionist, and I see if I see that, my mind gets mad. It's like a messy room. And I see Gary has his trailers on his jig like that, and he gets into a segment where he talks about that, like he's filming with Wired to Fish, and I'm sitting in the back of the boat listening to him, and he mentions how he does it on purpose for that exact reason. Because say if it's a football jig, it lets those cross sit up a little bit higher, and I'm sitting there, I'm just like,
well, son of a gun.
And I'm like, damn it, I guess my OCD is gonna have to take a back step here, and so we're just gonna have to deal with it. But I wanted people to know that there's a reason why, and there's a good reason to do that. But that's a really, really good tidbit right there.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's very cool. It's funny too, because like I said, I went back and listened to Bass U. I had no clue that, Bobby, he was throwing a green jig with a green pumpkin, and it's just really cool because I think they were kind of moving up, starting to kind of get some areas ready and moving up super shallow at his event. And he kind of figured it out and fished the moment, and that's kind of, it's just so cool, man, because you look up and to all those guys, and when you kind of do something unknowingly that they did, and you look back, you're like, man, that's pretty cool that I figured that out kind of similarly. But the other tip I was going to say, when you're in a small area and you're trying to milk it hard for a tournament, and it's a spawning pocket, I mean, they spawn, and actually the heavy hitters event, I got to watch a little bit of that, and I remember Ott Defoe saying something. He said, man, he goes, you'd be shocked at how he talks. He's like, you'd be shocked at how little area I've even covered today, because he's probably known to run and gun a little bit, and he's like, I haven't even moved hardly at all, and because he's just going so slow, because he knew how many fish were in there because it's a spawning situation. It's a bar at 11:30 p.m. on a Thursday or Friday night in a college town, man. They are packed in there. So you got, if you know that, you're going to fish differently. And I knew that. So what I did on this jig, so just so you know, remember my kayak in that picture you show where that fish would be measured? I was right on the bank. I'm fishing that way around this entire spawning pocket. My kayak is on the bank and I'm making parallel casts to the bank, but I'm not making my typical Drew Gregory, covering a lot of water as far as I can throw it, parallel cast to be able to, cover a ton of water in one cast, right? To be able to then paddle closer to where that cast landed and do it again and again and just continue to cover bank. This is completely different. I know there's fish here. I don't want to cast really far, catch a fish, and spook all the other fish by fighting that fish through all the other fish that are potentially right there on bed because they were just so close together. So I'm making very short pitches, very short little skip casts, and then I'm able to pick off every single next fish, And then what else I did to really milk it and get one last final call at the end of the day was I went around the pocket the opposite direction. So I'm left-handed, and I typically fish with the bank on the right, so I can do a roll cast, skip cast with left-handed. And I did it the opposite. I went around a complete different way so I could backhand flip and backhand cast and hit some angles behind some of these trees that were laid over in the water, just a few different trees and some obstacles where I needed a backhanded cast to get my jig into a little 1 or 2 foot little section of this little pocket I haven't had my jig exactly go through yet. You know what I mean? It's crazy how that made a difference. And sure enough, man, my last call, but when the leaderboard went off, 17 and 3/4 inch fish, knocked out one of those 16 and 3/4. So a whole inch upgrade came when I let that area rest for a whole nother whole 2 hours. I waited for a while. I actually took a little break, ate some food, just let it all settle because I knew I wasn't going to, hop back in the Tacoma and go to the other spot at this point, right? I'm catching 17, 18, 19, 20 inch fish. So why would you leave? I said, I can milk this for one more. And I looked at the leaderboard just like you because it's a one-day tournament. So I said, you know what? I know exactly what I have to do and had a good lead. But just like you, Bailey, until they announced the second place person and my name wasn't said, I didn't know. You never know because some people don't upload because of self-service. They don't upload any of their fish. So anyway, even though everyone was like, congrats, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. We'll see, And then, oh, man, I turned and I think Eric Siddiqui was there and it just finally all the emotion just kind of hit you. Like, dude, I just won a Bassmaster event and I'm a Bassmaster champion. That's pretty cool. Looking up to that brand, that magazine as a kid, growing up with it. So, man, it was pretty exciting.
Heck yeah, dude.
And John Stewart and the gang, by the way, incredible job. I want to shout out to the folks at Bassmaster, Dwayne, John Stewart, everybody, did such an incredible job. Mark Cisneros with the photos. And another cool thing Bassmaster does, your checks are already printed out. John Stewart's wife was there. The checks are printed out and you walk away with your cash right then and there. So great job, Bassmaster. Every tournament gets even better with them. They're still young in this series, and we'll see if we can make a run at that AOI, and now I got to catch up over there on the Hobie side. Catch up to you.
Yeah, you got to qualify for that TOC, son, so we can room together in Louisiana.
That's right.
Yeah.
Chase hardware together.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I was talking with Nolan Miner. We chatted a bunch because, by the way, so folks, if you like YouTube, subscribe to Nolan Miner's YouTube channel because he is going to have an amazing clip from this tournament, like an all-out, on the water confrontation, kayak versus kayak. A guy trying to impede on his area that never caught a fish on day one tried to get on top of his area as Nolan's in the top 20, and they went at it. So Nolan was telling me about it at awards.
Yikes.
I can't wait to see that footage, which, by the way, speaking of that, if you haven't already, be sure to go listen to last night's Kayak Bass Nation episode because the guy there, Jeremy, got into a quite literal, he beat the crap out of a boater because the boater hit his kayak. Cops called, YouTube's hashtag cops called and all. It was crazy. Go listen to that story. It was actually pretty
Dude,
nice.
Hey, speaking of Nolan real quick too, fantasy kayak fishing, Paddle and Finn runs it. Really cool. I had Nolan Miner on my team and Bailey and Brady. I had a stacked team, dude.
You had to have the best lineup for that.
I did. But anyway, well, they updated the standings and it didn't seem to follow through right or something. They just did it again, so I bet you it's fixed now. But yeah, I had a good weekend for sure.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, Nolan, shout out to him, dude. Like, he's fished Bassmaster Open. This is his first year doing the kayak deal, and he's fished the first 3 Hobies every event so far this year, and he is top 20 and cashed at every single one. So basically, it takes top 20. Oh, look at that!
There
Current
we go.
rank
That's my
23.
money. That's my
Heck
team
yeah.
right there. Three
look
check
at that?
cashers in the winner. So
Yeah.
there you
And
go.
so technically speaking here, top 20 AOI make it to the Hobie TOC unless there's like drop downs. Like, say if one of the top 3 were to be in top 20 AOI, it'll drop down. Technically, Nolan's already in the TOC because he's top 20 3 times.
Yep.
So you'll have to make TOC and join us in a house for.
Oh yeah, man. I would. I'm definitely shooting for that. I'm gonna be fishing.
Pressure on,
here. The summer run for Drew in the rivers. I didn't have a great second day at Santee Cooper. I was sitting in like 20th out of 200 after day 1, but bombed on day 2 there. But anyway, I'll be fishing the Susquehanna. I'll be fishing on Lake Winnipesaukee, the Wolf and Fox River, and Dardanelle. So I got 4. I'll be fishing. So hopefully in those 4 I can.
Dude, you're gonna
make some magic happen.
You're going to.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. Never been there. There's really no rivers and creeks. It's another lake situation for me, pretty much. So I can't wait though.
Yeah,
Gin, clear water.
We'll talk offline.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It looks fun.
Yeah. Well, dude, it was something really cool, and it was really humbling for me too. Was seeing all the messages I got after the event of people that picked me for fantasy, and I was like, why are you in your right mind picking a New Yorker on Lake Eufala? That's what I'm so curious about. I was like, there are many better, like, realistic predictions here, but hey, I guess it worked out for him.
Like anybody from Alabama.
Right. Yeah. Anyone from Alabama or Georgia.
Dude, I don't know. But when it's your time, it's your time. It sounds so crazy. And, this was just your time. And it was just my time to win again. It'd been, I didn't win last year. I had a great year last year. I was second in the Hobie AOI standings heading into the TOC, but wasn't able to go to the TOC. What's that? Oh, Mark Edwards is saying you were cheap in the fantasy game. That's why he picked you. Okay. Yeah, but there were like a ton of people with that same price, like a ton, Mark.
That's hilarious.
But you picked Bailey. You made a right decision if you picked him.
Oh, man,
but anyway, it was your time, dude, and happy for you. And what's cool is, we just announced at Crescent the launch of this new kayak I've been working on for, seems like 2 years, probably a year and a half, and it's been delayed. And it was really cool, man, because if anybody needed a cool time to get a little bit of just extra love and press and have something coincide, it was us. It was amazing that I'm able to talk about the new Shoaly kayak that we just launched today, and I can post that YouTube video here in the comments if somebody wants to go check it out. But it's just really cool. I was able to go on Ronnie Moore and Kyle Jesse's podcast, Bassmaster Insider, earlier today, talk about kayak fishing with them, talk about the kayak. And so it's just cool, man, when it's your time, and God's timing is perfect. And I think it just was for you, for me. And just excited about the future of our sport, and the fact that we're getting more kayak anglers on some of these mainstream podcasts, so people can stop. We got to say the word kayak angler because that's the series we fish, but they can start just seeing everything in the Bassmaster universe now as we're all bass fishermen,
anglers,
and that's it.
Yeah.
Bass Angler Sportsman Society. It's not Bass Kayak Angler. It's not Bass Boat Angler. Not Bass John Boat. Not Bass Bank Fisherman. It's Bass Angler. And the cool thing is, Bassmaster does give you all those opportunities to fish in different ways. And Hobie and KBF, who started all this, they all are giving us all these opportunities. So hopefully we'll continue to get more on these mainstream podcasts. But not just that. It's not even that. It's about getting the kayak anglers, out there with these manufacturers, with Signature Series this, and, used in marketing more, because we are just all anglers, and we can cross between the two. I've considered jumping in the opens. I have thought, dude, you just could fish three in one region, and potentially, but I know people, Nolan did it. Like we're talking about. So we're all just kind of growing the whole sport as a whole. You know what I mean? It's not, and growing it the right way. That's what's important, and responsibility and stewardship. So that's kind of what I like to preach. And, anyway, I'm excited about that kayak. So I can post it in the comments here.
Yeah, post in the chat. Post in the chat, and then
Post in the
people can
chat.
take
I
a
don't know
look
if it
at
goes to all of them. Oh, I posted it as Serious Angler actually because I'm logged
Yeah,
in with your
perfect. We'll
account. So
let everybody see it.
yeah, you guys can check that out. And
But dude, to add on that too, like, you know, even though some of it might not be public facing, there are a lot of big name, you know, boaters, but also companies and organizations that are paying attention to kayak fishing. You know, some of the calls that I had for some people, you know, coming home from that, texts, messages, DMs, was pretty cool to see who's actually really paying attention to it. And just to see where the sport's gone has been pretty awesome. And
it is, man. No,
yeah.
I was impressed with the names that were commenting on your post, dude. I was like, look, you know, that's cool that you have those connection with those anglers and that they are still paying attention, even though you've done the press releases and they're, you know, your job, your PR work with them is done. Man, that also says a lot about you, man. So that's just a shout out to you and how you've kind of been on and off the cameras and in and out of the public spotlight. So that's pretty cool, man. And I appreciate all the bass boat anglers that still kind of peek over at us too and check out our stuff and give us a little love and respect every once in a while too. So
yeah, you saying that it makes me remember the commercial that you guys did for oh gosh, what's the text thing?
the lunker text when Matt Airy and
that commercial was amazing.
Fat Cat was there. That was a really good one. That was good that they integrated.
I think it was Thrift with the giant Rapala jerkbait.
Yeah, and what's funny is Brian New and Hank Cherry were there too, and that was before New. That was his first season on the Elites, and oh man, he, you know, it was just a cool group of guys that were real just hammers, just a really cool thing with lunker text. So those guys do a good job over there.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But dude, for real, congrats on the win, and you know, get your butt in the TOC so we can. Because I know we're gonna hang out at some of these events coming up. We're rooming together, but we need to add one more in November in Louisiana. But what's coming up next for you? Where are you traveling to next?
Lewis Smith for the Bassmaster Kayak series. So you know what? I'll be 3 events of 4 that I'm fishing, and they take your best 4 out of 5 total. So what's kind of cool is only 5 people are getting these this year. Well, minus 6, I guess you count the championship.
Right.
Eric Sadiki's got one, but it's probably different than this one, obviously. But so I missed Lake Fork for the Bassmaster series. So I have forced to fish all the last 4 to be able to have a shot at AOI. So I don't have a mulligan like some other people may. And I'm sitting 11th in the AOI standings with only having 2 events under my belt and other people having 3. So it's pretty good. I'm in a good spot. I just need to get Lewis Smith Lake is next. I'm taking it 1 tournament at a time. And then after that, it'll be Pickwick on the Bassmaster series to finish out in October. But yeah, Lewis Smith. And then I've got Champlain for KBF. And then after that's probably, one of the Hobie ones, probably maybe the Susquehanna. And then we'll start doing that river run, all the Hobies, the Wolf and Fox and
I'm so
Dardanelle and Winnipesaukee, I'll just kind of comes together there in the summer, the northern swing, if you will. What about you?
Well, here, real quick before we get into that, when will the official launch from Robert Thompson? When will the official launch be for the new Crescent kayak?
Well, I think we did post this today about we're in production now, but that just means we're building up our inventory of stock, and there's a ton of dealers we have to feed these kayaks to, so it's going to take a little while to build up the inventory, but hopefully, I don't know, hopefully a few weeks away, month, I don't know, somewhere. I mean, it just depends on a lot of things still, but even having said that, it's like that's when the first one might show up in the first shop. So, we'll get some more information out there on that, and there will be very soon. I'll be heading down and doing a promo video and a walkthrough video on the whole thing, a full walkthrough, because our little teaser today was kind of just filmed this cool. Scott Butcher did a cool video on it with some cool dark lighting. It was an idea that James Durbecker, the owner of Crescent, came up with. He was like, let's make a whole set of black pool, black water, black walls, and just get some lights kind of hitting it just right. And we teased it. So the walkthrough will be able to, I'll take you through everything, because trust me, guys, there is so much more to that kayak that you don't even see or don't understand yet. And the walkthrough is pretty exciting. So I can't wait to just get out on actual production models. I've fished out of prototypes, but get on a production model and go catch some shoal bass, which that fish is obviously named out after there in Georgia where I cut my teeth. So there's a lot of unique similarities to that, the rare and beautiful shoal bass and uniqueness that it has in the bass world and the kayak, and why it's kind of unique in the kayak fishing world. And it'll show in those videos. I'm pumped.
Heck yeah, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to talking tournaments, I will be at the Hobie BOS at Chickamauga, and then shortly after, probably see you at ICAST, and then see you a couple days after on the Susky.
That's right, man. I can't wait.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun. So
yeah. Andy, anything we're missing for tonight's show before we wrap this up?
Yeah, if everybody, you can feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe to Drew's page or the Serious Angler page. We truly appreciate it every time everybody tunes in. Like, we can't do this without the support of our viewers, so we truly do appreciate it, and everybody who comments on everything that we do and has been along for the ride for all of us. It's truly humbling and awesome.
Yeah, and Andy, because Drew and I have been having our night full of selfless plugs here, when will you have some openings coming up for your guide business if people want to come catch some big largemouth or smallmouth bass in New York?
After June 25th. I'm pretty much fully
booked up.
Yeah, I'm pretty booked up to
Wow.
June 25th.
That's awesome,
I go on
dude.
a ride from, I want to say it's like May 13th straight through June 23rd. I have like 3 or 4 days off in there, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna need a breather, so I didn't even advertise them. I didn't book Memorial Day weekend at all. So I'm like, I'm just leaving it open. I'm gonna take some family time and breathe because boat traffic is terrible that weekend, anyways. And then pretty much the first 3 weeks of June, it's every day. So
Heck yeah.
that's my
Wow.
favorite time to fish. Like, those 3 weeks in June is deep water, post-spawn, pre-spawn, spawn. It's everything going on, and they're all giants.
Dude,
You know what
I gotta
thinking,
get up
Andy?
there.
Andy, you know
One
what I'm
day.
thinking? You know what I'm thinking? And I think we need to have our viewers and listeners let us know what they think about this. But I think because you're so busy, coming up, and it's going to be hard for you and I to get some fun fishing time to go out and just crack some skulls. I think, our Friday pre-recorded show should just be on the water.
That'd be fun.
Just
It
fishing.
should be.
We'll just get 2 mics and we'll just go fish.
Brilliant. No,
Yeah.
I mean, I have some days open. It's just the one thing I
He
am
forgot
trying to
about
stay
me
away
already.
from is not guiding on Sundays. Like, I'm trying to keep family days open just because I am very busy. And then July and August, I'm not going to book as many days just because, like, these are my busy months now. And
Right.
then September through December, I have some steelhead dates that I'm doing and bass, like, in between. So if people want to come up and do like multiple, chase different species, that's when to do it. It's like mid-October, because we might not be able to catch bass at that time due to the weather, but we can go catch some big slime rockets.
Yeah.
So
I want
which
to
is
come up
fun.
and do a derb, a 2-on-2. Let's get Destin in this thing.
Oh.
Or, you know what I mean? Get him over there, me, and I don't know who the teams would be, but get up there with you guys. And here's what's funny. And I can't believe I'm admitting this. I live in Northeast Ohio now, and I've never fished really Lake Erie other than the East-West Harbor tournament. And I've been here, 2 years? I mean, I've just been busy moving up here, traveling, fishing these tournaments, designing this kayak that we all now, I mean, just been busy and just never have gotten the right day, right weather, just day off where I could just go and do it. So I need to get out there with the experts, with you guys, and
one day
make it happen. You're not that far away, man. So
No.
I need to do it.
No,
So
let's shoot it out there now. Like, November, there's usually a good week in November. That's when you need to come up. Me, you, and Bailey will go out and have some fun.
I love it. November.
Yeah. And it'll be like, you need to get here tomorrow type deal.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We can make it
So
happen.
so if you get that text, you need to get here tomorrow. Like,
okay. It'll be a derb, so it'll be your 3rd derb of the year. We'll count it so you can have a 3rd chance to win.
We'll make you a trophy.
Worst case, if Destin can't show, I'm sure Jeff would fill in proudly and happily. So, which is like one of my main guide partners I work with. He's an absolute hammer. Lake Erie Trophy Guide Service. He catches big ones. So, yeah.
Nice.
The dude.
Well, boys, anything left for the folks before we wrap up tonight? Drew, you got anything?
Got nothing, dude. I'm all talked out, which is
holy crap.
Clip this.
What?
We've done the impossible.
I'm all talked out.
Oh man. Well, before you find something to talk about here, folks, we appreciate you all. And once again, we'll We'll see you guys on Friday.
Oh.